Season 14 is probably one of everyone say it was a bad season of Thomas, but in my opinion, it's my fifth and favorite season. This season is decent. Although, if I have one complaint about this season, it still has the out of characters and the 3 strikes formula. But I don't have a problem with that. So, originally, TobyFan919 was going to review this season, but why not do a review this season for him by making my own tier list for him? And of course, my opinions. But hey, it's TobyFan919 opinion as well. So, let's start my ranking with the first episode of season 14 of Thomas's Tall Friend. In my opinion, this is probably one of my favorite episodes of Thomas. Thomas is perfectly much in character for once. The episode is not that bad, and I really love the idea of a concept of a Sodor animal zoo and an engine showing the giraffe on Sodor. But the problem is the strikes and the runtime. If you take Edward some of the roles and give him the small role of Brenham Docks and give Percy the larger role for Edward, I think it makes sense since Percy is Thomas's best friend and the lines pretty much more intelligible. I'm actually going to put this episode in the grade tier, one of my favorite Thomas stories. James in the Dark is an episode about James taking the wrong passengers, and I don't have a problem with that. It's just the episode kind of drags everything. James pretty much blinds in the dark for terrible reasons, and the episode could have been better if it's executed properly, but this episode is alright. It's a real fine and decent James story, but the problem is that James should have known it was Farmer Trotter, Farmer Cole, or basically any passengers like Louis Shabati. I mean, Orange and Skull did a better concept when James has to take the sheep to the mainland than to Farmer Cole's farm. However, this episode's alright and goes into the okay tier. Peggy Poggy Pickup is another Emily story. I mean, I do love the episode, and the concept is actually pretty good. Problem is that Emily's acting like she was basically a maid. I don't have a problem she's a maid character, but I think she could be better if you tweak Emily's character a bit, or replace her with another character, it would make a better episode. I'm actually gonna put this episode in also the okay tier. Charlie and Eddie is basically one of the great episodes in season 14. In fact, it was actually a feel fun adventure, and I really love this episode. Edward's pretty much in 80% character, Charlie is a nice touch, and also the episode and the music looks so catchy. And the best part of all, they recreate Birdie's chase, but instead Edward tries to catch up to Birdie. Even though Edward didn't get a chance to catch up, it's still a really great episode. And this episode could be better, but hey, I think this is real much better than, say, Playtime or something, but I think it was probably one of my favorite Edward stories. I'm actually gonna put this in the grade tier. This episode really jams its theme. Toby in the Whistling Woods is probably one of the weak Toby stories. In fact, it was not better. Toby is pretty much kind of out of character, and the episode runtime just kind of drags everything down. Now, I didn't say it was a bad thing, and in fact, it could be better. The episode's alright, but it's the narration that drags the story. It was so irritating, and we felt bad for Toby had to go through the Hit era and the Nitrogen era. If Edward's out of character bad enough, Toby is the one who has been out of character the most. So, as a weak episode about Toby, I'm just gonna put this in the poor tier. A really, really bad weak Toby episode. Henry's Health and Safety is another Henry episode. In fact, it's pretty good. At least it's better than Henry in the Wishing Tree. And the episode concept actually executes it pretty well. If I have one to complain about is Percy. One, you can choose Stepney to take the role, and maybe you can keep Henry. In my Thomas Precure series, I choose Cure Beauty to take the role. I don't have a problem with it, but I I consider this to be a better Henry episode than Henry's Magic Box. I'm actually gonna put this in the good tier. A really great Henry story and a better episode than Henry in the Magic Box, whatever you call it. Diesel's Special Delivery is a really nice Diesel episode. In fact, it's the only Diesel episode in the Nitrogen era, and I think I consider this episode a pretty good one. Yeah, I know Diesel's out of character here, but at least he's tried to be useful for once instead of being the antagonist, trying to give the children attention. And at least he tried to make something he was actually get his head, things make it right. So, I'm actually okay with Diesel in this episode. I'm actually gonna put this in the good tier along with Henry's health and safety. If I have one complaint of a bad episode, it's this. Pop Goes Thomas is a very bad Thomas episode. In fact, this episode isn't about Thomas. It's just him being out of character. Thomas had 0 brain cells. It could be fit better like, say, Charlie, Rosie, and Billy, or Thomas, his driver or fireman, or the existent brain fan should have heard the popping noise was coming from, and guess who was in the episode? Mr. Bubbles. Of all the characters they have to be choosing from, of human characters, is Mr. Bubbles. Why? He was worse than the Logan Locos. Although, if there's one funny point I can think about, it's basically this scene when the cops basically drop Mr. Bubbles' nose. Just for that, I'm putting this episode in the bad tier because this episode doesn't feel like Thomas. Victor Says Yes is a really great episode. I really love the idea that we get another episode about Victor, and this time, he's actually great in this episode. The writing is pretty well, the story handles close enough really well, and I love the character cast for all the choices. But the problem is, why did Ari and Bert return, and why they're at the Sodor Steamworks? Shouldn't it be at the Sodor Steelworks or Ironworks, I don't know. But it could be better if Splatter and Dodge took the role instead of Ari and Bert. But it doesn't pull back the episode, but at least it will still have some great positives. I'm actually gonna put this episode in the great tier. A really good classic story. Thomas in Charge is a alright episode. I don't mind Thomas in this episode, and the problem is, well, Thomas just randomly just asked the other engines to make the inspectors proudest the most in the railway, and it doesn't go very well. If worth anything, it will be better if Stanley takes the role, since he didn't get an episode about it, and it could be better if, say, like, Cure of Peace, Passion. It could be better. The episode's alright. I'm actually gonna put this in the good tier. Yeah, it's a good concept, but it could be better. Being Percy is a really decent Percy story, but the problem is that Percy's kind of the wrong choice. Percy wants to be like Gordon was a kind of idea, but it could be better if Rosie is in this episode, and it could be a real about a Rosie story that Rosie wants to be someone. In fact, I don't mind this episode. It has a good concept, but it was decent enough. I really love this episode, but there are two things problem. Percy just randomly didn't pick up the mail and has one stop, and it was stop for Lucia Barty and give her a train ride, which is kinda dull, but I'm alright with it. I'm just gonna put this in the okay tier. The episode has a good concept, but it could be better. Merry Winter Wish is kind of a dull one. I don't have a problem with this episode. It's just, well, Thomas giving everyone some wishes. I think the better role could be, say, for Charlie, Billy, or Stanley, or even Percy. But for that, this episode is alright. I'm just gonna put this in the middle of the average tier, but above Toby in the Western Woods. Thomas and the Snowman Party is a really bad Christmas episode. It's about Thomas just take random hats without permission. Thomas just steal hats. Well, if it was Billy in this episode, then it makes sense. But this one? It's just Thomas stealing hats of all characters. Why they can choose a different character? Thomas is completely out of character. The story is completely, terrible. And Thomas didn't know what Snowman hat looks like. It's a top hat. Does the top hat like that hat design? That the snowman? I don't know why, but it's just bad. And I could make it better if Billy's in this episode. I'm just gonna put this in the bad tier because, well, it was terrible. Merry Misty Island is a really interesting Logging Locos episode. It's about the Logging Locos want to celebrate Christmas with the engines and their friends. I kinda like the idea. It's a natural way like everyone wants to make a Christmas party, but they didn't know what a Christmas party looks like. I really love the character choices, and Rash and Dash and Ferdinand were actually pretty great in this episode. I'm actually gonna put this in the good tier. Thomas's Crazy Day is a really decent Thomas story. Thomas is perfectly much in 90% character. I really love the idea that he wants to have more fun with Percy, but he has to show the Logging Locos, well, to show how it works at random docks. It could be better if Thomas has to help Percy with the shunting, and it would make a better episode with good concept, but the problem is it just kind of drags a bit. I have no problem with this episode. It actually looks pretty good. Now, I don't mind the problem, and even this slide from this. Yeah, I actually like this scene. It's actually kind of funny. I'm just gonna put this in the good tier. Jumping Joey Wood is another good episode of the Logging Locos. I really love the idea where Thomas had to show Edward and the Logging Locos how to be really useful and had to stay on Sodor, but I don't care how the match popped out of nowhere at Misty Island before Thomas and Edward. Also, this line over here is kind of funny.
That's right, boss. Boss?
Yeah, that line is kind of funny. And I don't give all characters that Thomas had to be in this role. Couldn't it be just say like Toby and maybe Murdoch, Neville, or Molly in this episode? It could be better, but it's actually pretty good. I'm actually gonna put this episode in the okay tier. Thomas and Scruff is about Emily's rubbish, but with Thomas and Scruff. Now, Scruff is a really decent character, and he continues character's arc on his way into the Andrew Brennan era. I get that Thomas don't think really useful engines go dirty, but you see with, then it makes sense both. But I don't have a problem with this episode. It is a really good one, and I don't have a problem with it. It could be better if the episode character could be besides Thomas. It could be better, like, say, like, another pre-Cure engine, like, say, Cure, Muse, Beat, Ability, or basic other pre-Cure characters, or Thomas characters. I'm actually gonna put this in the okay tier. A pretty good episode, too. All the Identity is really the best one. Gordon is perfect much in character. In fact, the episode has a really good concept. A first express engine working with waste dump was actually a pretty good idea. And it fits Gordon's character pretty well. Gordon is a perfect choice in the character, and he chooses 3 engines was understandable. But I don't get why Scruff scrunched his buffer beam. But I really love nice to see with the express, and it looks actually pretty nice. I really love Gordon's nicer side in the Nitrogen era. I'm actually gonna put this episode in the great tier. Jitters and Japer is a really nice good episode. Nothing really actually special happened. It's just Thomas wanted to improve Dowager Hat well, just want to have more fun. In fact, I kind of enjoyed this episode. The episode is handled real well, Thomas is perfectly much in character, and showing her in Miss Island was actually pretty nice. I'm actually gonna put this episode in the grade tier. Henry's Magic Box is a really bad Henry episode. In fact, Henry has 0 brain cells. He should have known where the box is, and in fact, he's taking care of the box. It looks like he's taking care of a child or a pet. And Christmas trees in a box, it looks like a Dr. Seuss book. And do you know what's worst of all? Henry doesn't get a clue where the box is because the Christmas tree is inside the box. Could it be just a present? Oh, and there's also this line.
Ho, ho, ho! Happy winter holidays to all my really useful engines!
Yeah, I'm just gonna put the episode in the bad tier. In conclusion, Season 14 is a decent season. In fact, it's probably my 5th and favorite season. The problem is the characters are still out of character, and the 3 strikes are still there, and the writing isn't that the greatest. Although there are some good episodes, exception of 3, pretty a nice standout to it. It was much better than, well, what we got. In conclusion, Season 14 is probably a decent season for me, of course, in my opinion. I know it's Toby Fan 919's opinion as well, but hey, we have different opinions. So, that's gonna wrap this up for this entire ranking. I wasn't sure if I do plan more rankings, but for now, this is what I had. So, I'll see you on the next video, and see you on the anniversary. Cheerio!